What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Live One for One, where we have conversations that challenge us to live a life that will change a life. My name is John, and today I have a new friend, probably over the last couple of months, by the name of Destin Frost.
Yeah.
That's your real name?
It is, yeah.
Your mom and dad were like, we're going to name him Destin Frost.
Listen, my whole family, they have pretty unique names. So
Yeah.
props to my parents because it's Destin. I have a younger brother named Malachi, last book of the Old Testament.
Malachi Frost.
That's right. And
Wow.
then my youngest brother is Addison.
Addison Frost.
Destin, Malachi, Addison. I think they did pretty good with the names.
I agree.
They kind of crushed it.
I intentionally named my son Judah James. I gave him like a powerhouse first name and then like a good follow-up second name just in case he ever wanted to be a musician.
Right.
Because Widrick just doesn't sound. I always hated that. I'm like, what? I mean, people always say like, oh, you sound like John Wick. That's so cool.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And I was like, yeah, I guess that's kind of neat. Yeah, that's cool. I should have changed my name when I got married. You know how you can do that? Come up like with like some new name, but I didn't. So it's still Widrick. But I was like, what if we named Judah James? That could be cool. I could see like an old country guy. But we'll
100%.
see. He's a drum. He's actually a drummer too.
Is he for real?
He's 7 years old. He got his first drum set.
About this.
Yeah,
we've talked about this. Yeah, I love that.
Because you're a drummer. You've played in a bunch of bands.
Yeah. I always say that music was my first love, and I fell in love with music when I was really, really young. 7, 8 years old.
Yeah,
and then picked up drums around maybe 11 or so, and just have been playing ever since. And I was also an athlete as well, so I played baseball and just loved that whole world. But around the time of 15, it was interesting because I was like, oh, I want to be a baseball player. Music is a hobby. And around 15, it flipped. I was like, no, music is like my thing now.
That's awesome.
And athletics have become a hobby.
Yeah.
Now I'm just awful,
Yeah, I know. If you don't keep up with it, you eventually just are terrible.
Awful. Yeah.
People are like, you used to play baseball?
Yeah.
Really?
It's like, no, this is not for me anymore.
Yeah.
And but music has stayed alive in my life, and I love it. And had some bands and recording music and been involved in studios and stuff like that. So I love all of that.
That's awesome.
And now getting, because all of that I wasn't saved.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got saved, that was a really cool just redemption story of like the Lord using my career, just like what I wanted to do, what I was going to make a name for myself, and I was going to be great, if you will. And then the Lord was like, you know what, we're going to use that, and you're going to worship me and lead others to praise me through that. And that's been so much fun.
That's awesome.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I want to back up really quick because first off, Destin is, for those of you who are listening and you're kind of wondering, who's Destin Frost? And so we're in Wilson County. We have listeners from all over Wilson County in Tennessee.
Awesome.
Destin is the youth pastor of a church called Connect Church.
That's right.
And you have been there for a number of years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Been on staff at the church since 2020.
Yeah.
I came in the middle of COVID. That was a super great time.
That's a great time to go into ministry.
Yeah, absolutely. And but been at the church since 2018.
Yes.
2018, the end of 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would love for people to be able to hear your story really quick because I loved what you shared when you and I went out for coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll never forget when I first sat down with you, I was like, dude, this guy is like well beyond his years I thought you were 22. We just talked about this, that they can, if you're watching, you can see, I mean, he's 29, but you look like you're 22. You're talking about, you could be like in your front row of your youth ministry and be worshiping, and nobody would be like, oh, God bless this little guy here.
Yeah. I tell people all the time. It's just, if I shave, I would be in the youth group. That's why I have to keep this.
That's awesome.
Otherwise, it's not going to work. I'm just going to look like another student.
Right. That's hilarious, man. Oh my gosh. You have like some 16-year-old kid who's like, hey, what's up, man? You guys want to play Fortnite later? You're like, dude, I'm the youth pastor. But yes, I still do want to play Fortnite with you.
I know. It's great.
That's awesome. But tell us how you got into ministry, because this was not your pursuit. I mean, if anything, you were totally outside of church life altogether. I mean, that was something you didn't even really believe in, but I'd love for you to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was raised in a Christian home. And so by the time I was 15, though, it didn't matter to me. I had other greater, bigger things that were planned on my docket, if you will. And so, and as I alluded to a minute ago, music was the thing that I was pursuing the most. I was like, I want to go into studios, I want to tour, I want to play drums professionally. Had a band, looking to get it big, go that whole route. And so while I was pursuing that, I just dropped anything church, God, all of it. Would probably describe myself, looking back on it, I would probably describe myself as somebody who was agnostic at that time. So, just didn't know Jesus. I thought that there was something out there, but just didn't have a real experience or real relationship with Jesus. And so, now all of that changed around 20. Well, how old was I? I think I was 21, around 21 years old or so. And so 15 to 21, nothing. I was out and I was just out of the church. And had a friend of mine. I was living in Williamson County, so I'm from Brentwood, Franklin area. Graduated from Brentwood High, went to Brentwood Middle. Like I lived there basically since I was 6 years old. So that's my hometown. I was born in Knoxville, but my hometown is Brentwood. So was raised there, and after I graduated, was pursuing music, all the things, and still living at home, and had a friend of mine that I was working with at a restaurant invite me to his baby dedication at his church. Now we were friends, so of course I'm like, yeah, man, I'll go and support you. I'll just go and support you. So my wife, we were dating at the time, we end up going to this church, which was Connect Church. And so we drive, from Franklin to Wilson Central High School, where the church was meeting. So it was like an hour drive. And we walk into this church for the first time and sat down, and we're there for the baby dedication. It was his firstborn son. And so we were like, yeah, man, like this is great. Like super happy for you, all the things. And my girlfriend, now my wife, I'm just going to refer to as Hannah. And so Hannah was like, oh my goodness, maybe we should go back to that. And so we ended up going back, and long story short,
church? So you're driving back and forth between. Oh wow.
Yes. Yeah. So
that's a bit of a hike.
Yeah. So we need to go back. So we ended up going, and long story short, we ended up planting. We ended up staying, and just went along this process of what it meant to truly be discipled, if you will, and never had leaders or mentors or pastors in my life that were like, hey, like let's talk about this, like let's dig into this, and people who are interested in our relationship and just were trying to help us frame marriage, because that was something in the future for us. And so we arrived at the church in it was like September, October 2018. November 3rd, 2019, I get baptized, and Hannah is also gets baptized the same day. And in Wilson Central High School, super cool, in the literally in the lobby, just in the lobby of the school. And then January 18th, 2020, I get married. So it's just a month later, right? And so I really just gave my life to the Lord, that day. I always say that the day I gave my life to the Lord was the day I got baptized, that November 3rd, 2019. And then we get married. And then so I'm brand new, just like brand new Christian, somebody, and we're going, and so from January 2020, then moving down to August of 2020, or around July, August, that time period, our pastors, I was on the student team, so a friend of mine who was in fact in our wedding, he was a great friend of mine, and he was the previous student director. And so I was just there. He asked me to be there. I was like, yeah, I'll be a part of this. And so I was doing that for maybe a year, and just doing whatever they asked me to do. I would run sound, because my background's in music, so I would run sound for them. At one point he was like, hey, I want you to preach a message on generosity. And was like, okay, like I've never done that before, but sure, like I'll do that. And just anything that they asked me to do, I maybe not anything, but many things that they asked me to do, I said yes to, and was like, sure, I'll step into that. Sure. I'll do that. Tithing. Sure. Okay. Yeah. Right. I'll start doing that.
Yeah.
And then around July or August 2020, they sat down and were like, hey, he's going to leave. He's going to go to school. And we would like for you to step in to be the new student director. Now, everybody knew at that point that I was not ready for that. Everybody.
You've been a Christian for how long at this point?
8 months.
8 months.
You know
and they're like,
even
and who was it that talked to you? Was it
years? You know what I'm saying? Like
your lead pastor.
the
disciples got 3 years.
The disciples got 3 years. I got 8 months.
You got 8 months, yeah.
But
was that Pastor Devin, your lead pastor, who was the one having that convo with you? Or?
It was actually no. It was actually Pastor Todd Griggs, who is the associate pastor.
Gotcha.
And also one who's been very, very integrally involved in Hannah and I's life. His wife Micah, great people, love them to death.
That's awesome.
And really they've really been ones who just leaded and guided us, and their lives are worth modeling. So it was very easy, to say yes to that.
Sure,
it was very easy to say yes to them, and because I saw their life and. It's like, I want that, like that.
Yeah.
Like, I want your kids.
Yes.
I want that life. I want your peace. I want your confidence, and so it was very easy to say yes to them. And so he was the one that sat me down, was like, hey, we want you to step into this new space. And I remember driving on the way home thinking, how did I get here?
Yeah.
I'm driving on the way home from the church and going, Hannah doesn't know this yet. So I'm on the drive home, thinking about this entire thing. And I was living in Hermitage at the time. So I had like a 35-minute drive.
Yeah.
Hannah doesn't know this yet. I'm like, what is she going to think about this?
Right.
What are we going to do? I never asked for this.
Mm-hmm.
I never was pursuing this at all.
Yeah.
And so I just kept saying yes to things.
Mm-hmm.
And now here I am. And now they're asking to give me a job.
Yeah.
And, well, guess what? I said yes.
And I think and the crazy thing is too, is I think, there's been a lot of people who have been in various different ministry roles before, where somebody maybe has, the church is somewhat maybe unorganized, and maybe they're just looking for somebody because there's nobody else. But there's a real beauty of Connect Church. I mean, they are a very sharp church.
Yeah.
And so I was actually surprised when you said that, because when I met Pastor Devin and his wife, they're very, we were talking like Patrick Lencioni, like The Advantage, like they're talking all this kind of stuff, like super into organizational health, processes, procedures. Yeah. And you can see that they're very keen on all that. Yeah. And so, so I think there was a lot to be said. It wasn't that, hey, we just need somebody, but they were very intentional about, hey, we want this individual. Yeah. Based on maybe his philosophy or hearing from God that, like, man, you were the guy. And you're, like you said, you're 8 months in. And I think there's such a difference in that, because we've all known, or at least I've known many situations where you have a very dysfunctional church and they're like, sure, you can take it, and God can still move in that. Yep. But there's definitely, that could go south too, if you don't have the right leadership guiding that 8-month-old believer. Yep. So we're not saying that everyone should do this, but at the same time, hey, if you're a solid leader and you're willing to shepherd, which Pastor Todd did for you, I mean, he took you under his wing, dude, that's amazing. Yeah. Like, I love stuff like that.
Yeah. It was quite the experience. And after saying yes to that, coming off post-COVID, at this point now we have our building that's off of Central Pike, and so we're meeting there. Mm-hmm. Now it's this weird season, right? Because you have COVID just hit, we're getting ready to open buildings back up, and now you have a change of leadership. Yeah. There's nothing. Right. There's no structure. There's no students. Yeah. Like there was basically nothing at all. Right. No team. Like the team, there was, this change of leadership. There's always just different turnover there. And then people that was another situation of when people coming off of COVID. There was a lot of people who were hesitant to return back. A lot of people that I know that just never returned back after COVID. Yeah. And so there was a lot of change in that regard, which led to a lot of learning very quickly. What are we doing? Yeah. What am I doing? Right. I'm not qualified for this. I have great leaders, but I'm just drinking through a fire hose at every moment, Yeah. And I always I tell people this, that my journey in just being a student director and being a youth pastor and just being involved in the church and learning what it means to do this role, what it means to just shepherd and love students and build team and love people, is I was just really had to figure it out while I was being paid to do it. Yeah. It wasn't like I was being groomed to step into this. I stepped into it and then had to learn and grow and figured out and be corrected and time after time after time, and it's like, hey, here's the direction we're going to go. And so the majority of my Christian walk has been with me being on staff at a church.
Yeah.
And I guess the Lord was like,
he knew
you would bounce if you weren't on staff at a church. I don't know. I have no idea, but it was just how the story went. And so,
you mentioned one time when we were talking about this earlier, that there was a lot of really hard conversations that you had to have with Pastor Todd, I believe, in your growth as it relates to kind of where you're at now, in the sense of, they were kind of coming at you with character. They were coming at you with your kind of philosophy of leadership regularly.
Yeah.
But yet you stayed consistently through it. Cause a lot of times, as we know, when you start to have confrontation, people either do one of two things. They either submit to the value, or they
get offended,
transition out because they're offended. And, that's just the name of the game. And so talk to me about why you chose to continue to endure that grind of just constantly being critiqued, constantly being in a situation where, every time you do something, someone's coming up to you and giving you more feedback on how you could be better and why you didn't jump ship.
Yeah, that's a great question. I do want to clarify just the way that, and being corrected and challenged and all of that. It was never from this place of trying to control.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. And so
they just saw things in leadership, and they wanted you to be the best that you can be. Yes. They loved you, really, is what they did. They loved you.
Exactly. And so and we do a lot of teaching just on that. Pastor Devin, he leads our team so well in teaching us what that looks like.
Yeah.
Because Jesus, even a third of Jesus's followers left. Or when he's preaching, like a third of the crowd, third of the crowd get up and leave. He had one of his 12 bounce. Like one of the 12 of Jesus's bounced on him.
Isn't that crazy to think
That's
about?
unbelievable. Even Peter denied him 3 times. Right. So, there was like this, but he's the Christ.
Right. Perfection of leadership. Yes. And yet people are still bouncing.
People are still bouncing on him. And so that just resonated so much with me, I think. And I don't know necessarily a particular reason that I ended up staying, other than just that it was ingrained in me. It was taught I was just taught that, one, it was from a place of love. So I always, our pastor talks about this. He says that there, good ways to pastor people, how to pastor well. And he says we have to love people, we have to know people, and we have to challenge.
Yeah.
And so if you don't love and know, it's going to be very hard to challenge.
Right.
They're going to get discouraged or get offended. They're going to bounce and
That's
leave.
Good. I love that.
You cannot challenge without the basis of them knowing that you love them.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to talk to you about something because I love you.
Yes.
And the reason for this is, and you can get better.
Yes.
You can be better. I love you. You can be better. And but also, I know your circumstances. I know the life that you're living. I know your marriage. I know the things that you care about. I know you. I know your personality. I know your spiritual giftings.
Yeah.
I know who you are.
Yes.
And so I can speak into that because I know you. And so my pastors have done, yes, they're very great at challenging, but they love people so well. And so I've always felt loved by Pastor Devin, always felt loved by Pastor Todd. And I knew that they loved me. And because I spent so much time around them, I knew that they knew me. Now, there were many times and many moments where I felt misunderstood.
Sure.
And moments where I didn't necessarily understand myself.
Yeah.
But they understood me.
That's
because
good.
I spent so much, close quarters around them. And so, so because of that, I think that's the reason I didn't leave, was because I knew that the motive behind the challenge was not that they can control me, was not that they were going to try and push me out, that they didn't like me for some reason, but that because just knowing Jesus's life and what happened in his life when he was on earth and the people that bounced on him and the people that left, I think about, Judas and Peter, both of them in which got offended by things, right? Both of which, and one of them ends up killing himself and the other one ends up leading the entire New Testament church.
Right.
And the difference is that Peter went back to Jesus. He went back to him and confessed.
Yeah.
Judas isolated. And so that picture, death and purpose, that those two, like it's a tale of two disciples, is so mind blowing.
There's your first book title, The Tale of Two Disciples. So great, there you go. Right.
I don't know. But that whole thing is so mind blowing to me because I'm seeing one person who's stepping into his calling, into his purpose, that chose to press in and chose to go back to his leader.
Yeah.
And one person who isolated and ended up losing everything.
Yeah.
And so, again, because I was taught these principles, I came in with no church background, no church hurt,
right?
To be honest, and no relationships.
Yeah.
So, baby Christian, but also just baby human. Like I didn't know anything.
Baby human.
Yeah, I just didn't know anything. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know, how to have relationships. I didn't know how to have healthy relationships, how to have a healthy marriage. I didn't know any of these things, and so I just truly submitted my life to my leaders. And I believe that's the reason why I stayed, just knowing that the longer that you press in and continue to press in, and placing trust in my leaders and my pastors who love me, who know me, who care for me, and are challenging me, not from a basis of wanting to control, but we want to help you and see you grow and step into everything that God has for you.
Yeah. I love that. The two things that stuck out to me that you said, which I think when it comes to leadership are so huge, when we're talking about development, we're talking about whether it's pastoring or you're a leader in an organization, is one, your leaders loved you and they knew you, which are two separate things.
Yes.
I've heard a lot of pastors or leaders say, man, I love, and as much as I understand their point in saying this, they'll sit in front of 2,000 people and say, man, I love all of you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you do. Mm-hmm. You love your church, your congregation, no doubt. But do you know them?
Mm-hmm.
Totally different thing.
Yep.
So loving and knowing are huge, and they both take different efforts, right?
Yes.
And I think when it comes to then the hard conversations, which you're so right in, one of the reasons why when we have hard conversations with our kids, we always talk in youth ministry. This, when I was in youth ministry for years, we'd always say, if you want your kids in your youth ministry to pray with you, then you have to engage and play with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true. So if you just come in and you're just immediately trying to get people to your end goal, we want them to come to know Jesus, we want them to, this is our end goal for them, or whatever organization you're part of, we want them to perform well on our sales team, fill in the blank. If you're just pushing them toward a goal, but you're not actually knowing them and loving them and engaging with them, then you're not going to do that. And we say all the time in the organization that I lead, we want people to be able to bring work home and home to work. Like, we want to know you. And I'm not going to, if you come in and you're crying and you're frustrated, I mean, we're there for you. Now, if you do it 2 days in a row, now you're going to get fired. No, I'm joking.
You're gone.
No. No. I mean, obviously there's wisdom in that, it's not like we all come in bearing, just like throwing up on everybody on the things that we're going through. There's a professional element to it, but still you can create a culture in which people feel very free in order to be able to be known.
Absolutely.
And they see that their leader wants to know them,
yes,
and wants to engage with them. And you still have that tension of, hey, I had this conversation with my son yesterday. He crossed a line in something that he said. Now, my son and I are super close.
Yeah.
We spend so much time together. I invest in my kids as much as I possibly can in every aspect. And he crossed a line because we have so much fun together. So he said something that was not respectful. And I called him on it. And I told him, he goes, I'm so sorry. And I said, well, here's the tension. I am your friend and I love you, but I'm also your dad.
Yes.
And so there's a tension there, and there always will be. And I said, I'm never going to be like your other 13-year-old friend where you can kind of, go back and forth like that. I said, there is a tension there. And there's a tension in the workplace, and that's good. There's a tension in our relationship with God. It's like, hey, Jesus is our friend. We are a friend of God, but yet he's still God. There's still a tension.
He's going
there.
to convict you about some things.
Yes. So there's that tension. Tell me really quick, what did the conversation look like when you're doing something and you look back? Do you remember a time specifically where your Pastor Todd engaged you? How did he do that from a leader? Did he bring you in and sit you down and talk to you? Did he just kind of coach you right in that moment? Gave me maybe share an opportunity to maybe a time that happened where you're like, man, that he handled this really well, and this is exactly how he did it.
Yeah,
you don't have to go into details or anything. But.
No, absolutely. That's a great question. And I think something that my pastors do really well is that they correct as soon as it's appropriate.
Okay.
And so, no one wants to, I get off a platform or something and I'm preaching a message or said something from a platform and I come off and it's just like, hey, let's talk about that. Like right in the middle of a service. Right. That's probably not the best appropriate, appropriate place to do so. But right. Will I get a phone call the next day? Certainly. And some things have just been like, hey, I noticed this, just making you aware. Other things that have been bigger is like, we need to have a conversation. We need to have a conversation about this. Yeah. And the why is always placed in front of me. Mm-hmm. So, here's why we want it this particular way. And, every church has a different culture of the way that they do things.
Yeah.
If I just completely miss something from a character point of view, that's different, but sometimes it's this is how we do things at Connect, which I had to learn that because
that was their philosophy of the way that they do it.
Yeah. There's a level that our pastors want things done with, and a spirit in which they want us to carry it through. And so I had to learn all that, and learning my leader, if you will, of what's acceptable to them, what do they want, and honoring them in it.
Yep.
And so for the things that they've placed before me, but I think that just kind of recalling a conversation or recalling a time and how it was done. I'm coming to one particular instance, and this is probably the one instance where was truly challenged to the core.
Okay.
And it got so bad that they would never say this. I don't know. Maybe they would. Maybe they would. But I was convinced I was going to lose my job.
Yeah,
I was convinced of it because of how all of this went down.
Gotcha.
And it was a moment where there was a blind spot of mine that I didn't see, and so somebody else saw it.
Okay.
And we all have those.
Yeah.
We all have blind spots. It's like you realize that you do that and you don't know it, right? And so it was probably this is probably one of the biggest principles I learned in ministry, I believe, was that and Pastor Devin has said this. I'm just gonna be a mouthpiece of my pastors today because that's all they love me and they've been discipling me. But we judge others by their actions, but ourselves by our intentions. Which is,
yes,
that's rough.
Yeah,
right?
You and I were talking about that in Lencioni's book. He talks.
Yes.
Well, it's a principle, I guess, that goes beyond his book, the fundamental attribution error.
Yes,
which is exactly that. We judge everyone else by their actions and us by our intentions.
We see somebody on the interstate and they cut in front of us. We're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What is going on right now?
What a jerk. He's a terrible person.
Human. He's just out to get me.
Yes.
Right. We start personalizing it sometimes, which we're like, whoa, slow down.
Right.
But then to ourselves, I'm the one that cuts that person off. Sorry, I got it. I'm trying to get where I need to, And so I'm having to get where I need to go because I got a pregnant wife in the car or I got a crying baby in the car. We have no idea.
Right.
We have no idea. And so this is a situation where that was certainly the case.
Sure.
Where, I'm not intending to do what they're telling me I'm doing. So I thought it was an attack of my character.
Were you defensive to it?
Felt it? Oh, absolutely.
Were you? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was like, I don't understand because like, I don't feel like I'm doing that. I don't feel like I'm doing what you're telling me I'm doing.
Yeah.
But they're like, but you did.
I heard Craig Rochelle said this and I loved it. He said, the things in which we are most offensive about are our actual blind spots.
Mm-hmm. And that's really great.
I'm like, that is so true because
that's really great.
When you think to yourself, hey, I want to identify my blind spot. You almost can't.
No. That's
why you
can
you could spend a day. Spot. You could spend an entire day of meditation and being like, "What's my blind spot?"
Yeah.
Oh Jesus, teach me. No. And you would still walk away and probably do the very thing that drives everybody crazy.
Exactly.
And you would be defensive about it because you're like, I spent 24 hours nonstop praying.
Yep.
I have no blind spot.
Yep.
They're like, you're a narcissist.
Yeah. It's like that's your problem. And it's literally it's like what it says in 1 John. which it says, confess your sins to one another, you shall be healed. And it's like salvation comes from the Lord.
Yes.
Healing comes from community.
Yes.
It's the church. Healing comes from community. Good. It's like, how can I recognize the things I need to grow in if I'm not around people?
Yes.
I love the Lord, but I don't love his bride. Oh,
yeah.
Now we got a problem.
Yeah.
And so I'm like pressing. So that's the importance of that. Just having other people around you. How are you going to grow if you're not going to be consistent and plant yourself in the house of the Lord?
Yeah.
And yes, the Lord convicts, he speaks to, and a lot of the time he uses people.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
A lot of the time he uses other people to speak into you. That's besides the point.
But we'll swing back around because so you were defensive when they did approach you.
Absolutely.
And then go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, it had to get to a place of we had to get very direct about like, this is what's happening. This is what we're seeing. And eventually this is what set me free. This is what set me free because it's so funny. Just throwing all my dirty laundry out.
I love it, dude.
And this is what ended up happening. It's because it got so bad. I had to have a conversation with our lead pastors.
Yeah.
And my wife was there with me because it was like,
it's
going crazy.
This is awesome.
Like, oh my gosh, what is going on? Yeah. I feel super misunderstood. Hannah is kind of in the dark on the whole thing because she doesn't know exactly what the conversations have been had. So she's like feeling tension that is not her tension, but because she's so empathetic, she's feeling my tension.
Yeah.
And so, and we're kind of going in this loop and this circle around this particular time of like, what is happening? What is going on? And we ended up having a conversation with our lead pastors, and he said something. This is what set me free. This is in one sentence. This is what set me free. He said, Destin, I don't believe you ever intended to do this. I don't think you intended to respond in this way. And I'm like, wait, what? I was like, you don't think I'm intending to do this? And that's exactly what this whole thing was about for me.
Yeah.
Was that that's what I was held up on.
Right.
Is like, I was being told that I was doing something, but I wasn't intending on doing that. I thought I was checking my heart, right? My intentions were pure in me stepping into this, or in me doing the thing that they were asking me to do, or not, or doing the thing that I didn't do. They asked me to do something, I didn't do it. And so I was so confused. I was so confused by all that. And he set me free literally in one sentence. He was like, I don't think that you intended to do this, but this is what's happened.
Yeah.
And it was the separation of that. I had to separate those two things, what I was intending to do versus what had actually been done. And what I'd been doing was not listening.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I wasn't doing, was not listening.
Wow.
And so, and the reason for that, that's a story for a different time.
Sure.
But ultimately, it was a process of me just having some conversations, them being willing to have conversations and extra conversations with me to kind of just chip away at, the hurt, the pain, or the confusion that I was in the moment. And so, they're so patient.
Yes.
They were so patient with me, and thank God for that, because
awesome.
I could see, looking back on this, I could see how this could have gone south. And a week goes by, and nothing's really changing, nothing's really happening.
Yeah.
And they were like, we got to move on.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think in any organization,
they probably would have.
That would have been, that's probably what we would have done.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to throw Pastor Todd under the bus by saying this, but he literally told me at one point, he was like, I was done.
I almost spit my coffee out.
He told me this. He was just like, I was done. I was done. And Pastor Devin was like, we don't bounce on people.
Wow.
We don't bounce on people like that. And so now he was the one that was in the weeds with it.
Sure.
So his frustration, I totally get that.
Yeah.
Like, I totally understand his frustration. But
I was frustrated with that. I love all that conflict. I think that's so healthy. Churches run from this. Organizations run from this stuff.
Marriages run from this.
Marriages run from it.
Yeah.
And the beauty is that you actually find your tribe in the midst of the conflict. Now obviously, when you have a development conversation, it's a development conversation, and people have to choose what they're going to do. Yeah. If you're a values-based organization, even if you're a values-based family, if you have, let's use the marriage, for example, we talked about that. If you have two people they're in a marriage, and one of them is continually stepping outside of the values in which that family has, you have to ask that individual at some point and say, do you want to be in this marriage still?
Right.
And that's a very honest question. Do you want to be here?
Mm-hmm.
I do, or maybe, you know, you don't, and she does, vice versa. But that's a very real question, because if you do, then there's certain values in which you're agreeing to, and that you have committed to, and you made a covenant before God that you have to continue forward with.
Yes.
And
great.
I think when you look at your organizations, your church, whatever you're doing, if you have your values, you have your philosophy in the which way you believe that you want to lead your organization, and you're going to have conversations that are hard.
Yeah.
You're going to laugh with people. You're going to have great times. And then you're going to be having these moments where you say, okay, now I have to have a development conversation. That tension we talked about.
Yep.
That person I just laughed with and we were joking around in the office the other day. Yep. Now I have to have a development conversation. This is awkward, right?
Yes.
It's going to be awkward for them. It's awkward for me. And I think the best way to do it, first off, you have to do it. Otherwise, your organization will eventually start to deteriorate, and you're basically just allowing it to be cancerous.
Yes.
But two is, the best way to do it is hit it right out of the gate. Mm-hmm. Like, I've been in conversations before, and I hate this, when I sit at a table and someone is sugarcoating a conversation, but I can tell there's something bigger that they want to tell me.
Yes.
And they're not.
Yep.
And then they finally get to it after they basically kind of fluffed me up.
Yes.
And then now they're saying, hey, I wanted to talk to you about this. Boom.
Yep.
So it kind of feels like a little bit of a bait and switch.
Mm-hmm.
The best leadership that I've had is when someone has brought me in and they say, hey, this is a developmental conversation. This is what I've been seeing, and I'm telling you this because I love you and I care about you. I want you to be the best that you can possibly be as a leader.
Yep.
And this is what I'm seeing. And then you're giving them an opportunity and a timeline to change it. Yes. I need to see a change within this time frame. And we're going to reevaluate and circle back around, say, put a timeline on it. You come back, and then you keep that commitment of that timeline. And you, from there, re-engage about, did they actually pivot?
Yep.
Or are they continuing to head down the road in which they were before?
Yeah.
And then at that point, as a leader, sure, you do have a decision to make.
Yep.
Are we going to continue forward with them?
Yep.
Are we going to, did we see improvement? Maybe not fully what we wanted, but they are trying.
Mm-hmm.
And so really that's obviously where you take wisdom as a leader to decide what you're going to do in discerning your next steps. But you have to hit it right out of the gate.
Yes.
Don't sugarcoat it. Bring them in. This is a developmental conversation. I care about you. Kind of what you said earlier. You're already doing your legwork in the front end of you know them, you love them.
Yeah.
Be direct. Get to the point. Give them a timeline, and then follow up on that timeline, and then make a decision.
Yes.
As Craig Rochelle always says, no decision is a decision.
Is a decision.
So
right.
Making that call too.
Just to throw out another, leadership guru in Patrick Lencioni. We love Patrick Lencioni. And so one of the things that
I feel like Patrick Lencioni should start paying us.
Honestly.
I mean, he moved to Tennessee. I feel like
he's serious.
Yeah, his offices are in Tennessee now. I know. Bro. We should just like totally crash his office one day.
Like, hey, it's John and Destin here.
It's like him and Cody are in the middle of a podcast, and we just like knock on the door.
Knock, knock. Hello. That's so great. But one of the things that he says in, I think it's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which is a fantastic book.
So good.
For organizational health.
I love that.
But one of the things that he says is you have to mine for conflict. Mining for conflict, which I love this because most people are not going to just allow themselves. Some people do, right? People who maybe are more, 8 Enneagram challengers and those who feel comfortable in the spaces. But a lot of the time we're mining for conflict. We're going, so what do you think about this? Do you disagree with this? Asking the questions to get it out of them to see.
That's good.
What do you think of this? What do you think of this? And one of the other things that I was pulling up as well.
Yeah, I can see you're busy on your phone. I'm like, oh, what's he going to pull up?
Yeah, I pulled up something from one of our, I guess you could say an overseer of our church, and he's at Church of the Highlands in Birmingham, Alabama's Pastor Lane Strands, and something that he says to our team all the time is that you have to create an instant feedback culture. And he made this so simple for me, which he said, it was just a very simple sentence. He said, feedback is discipleship. Feedback is discipleship. It's instant as soon as it's appropriate. And when you give feedback, they need to know that you love them more than the desired behavior.
Wow.
I love that. I love that.
That's really good.
And so again, it has to come from this place of, we love you. you know that we love you, and you know that we know you.
Yeah.
We love you and we know you. And I just love, he says this, he says, if you love someone, you will not stand by and let them stay the same and fail.
Yeah.
If you truly love someone,
for sure,
and that's so powerful.
Yeah.
When it comes to stepping into challenging conversations. Pastor Devin says this all the time. He's like, we do marriage counseling, right? And a lot of the time when people come in and we're doing marriage counseling, they're a half mile down the road,
right,
to where it needs to. And every day was just a step.
Yes.
Every day was a step. We never see them until they get a half mile down the road, where it's crisis.
For sure.
But it's because of a conversation that wasn't had, because of a redirect that wasn't had, and day after day after day after lack of conversation, after bad conversation, it just gets sideways.
100%.
And then you realize, you wake up one day and we're like, oh, this is a crisis.
Yeah.
And we need help.
For sure.
But now we got to do more work than it did if we just went one step to the side. We were like, whoa.
Yeah.
What was that? Like, let's
100%.
have a conversation about that. And they look different.
Yeah.
For marriages and organizations, of course. But
I mean, it's everything. I mean, your health is you don't manage the day to day on your health. Same thing. You wake up, oh gosh, my blood pressure is high. I'm overweight. I got this issue now. Or if you're just managing the day to day, I've heard it said even with individuals when it even comes to that, where it's like, hey, I couldn't work out today, but I did 100 push-ups in the day. Or hey, I did something versus nothing. Like, just instead of throwing the whole day out, like, hey, I'm just going to go outside and take a quick walk, just to at least do something. But I think if you apply that principle to every area of your life, your marriage, your relationships, your work environment, it's that little 1%. And even with I love leadership. I love learning. I love growing. I don't have the time like some people do to be able to read 2, 3, 4 chapters in a day. I just don't. So I'll wake up and I'm like, hey, I care more about the 7-day week. So I'm going to do a chapter every single day. Typical average chapter in a book, 12 to 15.
Sure.
So you're looking at, if I do that every single day throughout the entire year, around 24 books a year.
Yeah.
Which is
that's
awesome. Right. But that's just a chapter
more
a day.
Than the average.
Chapter a day.
Yep.
But you don't think of it in the context of that. So then you times that by 3, you times that by 5. And next thing you know, you're like plowing through these books and you're growing as a leader. And the same thing is true with your marriage. Like, how to do little things every day. And then you fast forward a year from now, you're like, man, I'm obsessed with my wife. She's obsessed with me. Like, we're having a great marriage. But it's like that little bit of every day you're doing it. And then, but at the same time to what you just said, the times that you don't do it, you turn into 24 hours, 72 hours, and all of a sudden your habits are off, your priorities are off. The next thing you know, you're wondering, why are these things happening? And you mentioned this earlier, which I love, because I remember when we were talking, I was so blown away by the amount of knowledge that you have as a leader at the age that you're at. And 2, and I think anybody listening would probably agree, like, wow, this guy is there's a gifting that you have, man, that's special for not only just for your age, but I think just your background, the way you communicate, the way that you're very likable. You're able to kind of communicate your thoughts very well. So I'm excited to see what God does with you in your life, man. It's going to be cool. So kind of you. But you and I were talking about, and this, to my point to this too, which I don't know hardly any people that do this. I know I do it, but I'm a weirdo when it comes to like people, when they say, what did you do for your vacation? I'm like, oh, we took a 6-hour drive and I listened to leadership podcasts the entire way, and I'm loving life.
Yeah.
And my wife is like stressed out. She's like, this is stressing me out. Can you please put your earbuds? And I'm like, And then I'm like, offended. Why are you stressed out?
Why are you cramping on this?
We're getting better as leaders. I'm always like in this development stage. Like, I love mentors. I love having, I have coaches in my life. I have, a retired major general who's a coach in my life.
Gosh,
I have a lady who's just a prestigious writer, and she graduated from Bandy with her master's, and she's a coach to me.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so I have these coaches in my life that I love geeking out on this. I'm like, grow me. You know what I mean? So when you and I were talking, and you were, and we'll kind of get to the story, but you mentioned, hey, we had our family meeting, which you don't have kids of your own, correct? Okay.
No.
But so you and your wife at your family meeting.
Yep.
I'm like, family meeting, I do those. I don't know a lot of people who do family meetings, like consistent family meetings, like, we do in our organizations, right? And then 2, you said, we were talking about our family values, and then you like list them off. And I'm like, I do that too. So it was an immediate connection, because I don't know, I can probably tell you maybe 2 people that I know that have family meetings regularly and family values. And when I say family values, again, these aren't aspirational values. These are, we talk about this, like, I'm talking about, we're talking about like these, like my kids know my values, know our family values. So if you were to take my 7-year-old and bring him in and say, Judah, what are your 3 family values? He could tell you, same thing with my daughter and my son, Ben. So we coach to them. We celebrate to them. We hold each other accountable. I've had my son come to me and say, Dad, I really feel like you didn't do your best here. And our value is work hard and do your best. And I'm like, well, talk to me about that. And so he's telling me that he felt like I could have done a better job in this area with my wife, Rachel. I'm like, whew,
you're sitting over here.
Hurts.
You got 2 coaches, and your son's over here, and he's like, hey, let me coach you.
Oh,
Dad.
Your kids are you're gonna know your blind spots when you start seeing your kids actually do them. You're like, where'd you get that? Well, I watched you. Wow, yeah, that hurts. But you mentioned that, and talk to me a little bit about, like, where did that come from? Like, just your passion for, man, we're gonna have family values. We're gonna have consistent, family meetings. And then I want to start to talk a little bit about your new journey that you've taken too.
Yeah, absolutely. So it started with my pastors.
Okay. So they do that. Okay.
Yep. So they say every organization has a culture.
Yeah.
Every family has a culture.
Yeah.
And so he challenges, Pastor Devin, he challenges all the parents at our church. He says, ask your kids what the culture of your home is.
Wow.
Now, whether you like it or not, that's the culture.
Yeah.
And you've created or allowed that. Because it's all, you're the leader of the home.
I haven't asked them that question. I'm going to ask them that tonight.
Yeah. It's Henry Cloud. Culture. Culture is what you create and what you allow.
Yeah.
And so, and we talk about that as leaders.
Yep.
And we're leaders of our home. We're leaders of organizations, right? And so we're looking at that and going, okay, what's the culture of your home? Now, if it's something that they tell you something, you're like, oh, that's not what we want it to be, right? That's not what we want it to be. It's like, okay, you have to be the one to define it.
Yeah.
If you're not the one defining it, the culture of this world will do it for you.
Yep.
If you're not the one defining it, your kids will define it for you. And so you are ridiculously in charge, is what Henry Cloud says, right? Boundaries for Leaders. Fantastic book plug right there. It's an unbelievable book.
I haven't read that. I'll put it on the list.
Unbelievable book. Yeah. And so, so we're talking about, it's like, okay, like you are ridiculously in charge of the culture of your home.
Yep.
And so Connect, we have values. We have values at Connect.
How many values do you guys have?
6. We have 6 core values.
Nice.
And then we have 6 leadership behavioral values.
Dude, they're so Patrick.
I know.
I love it.
How we interact with each other. But the core values of the church is really what's felt by the congregation of the church. When you walk in, am I experiencing authentic relationships?
Yes.
Am I experiencing the generosity of the people?
Yes.
Obviously, the first and the top most foremost thing is God's word and his presence.
Yes.
Are we experiencing God's word and his presence here? Because if we're not, this is nothing.
Sure.
It's all going to roll up like a scroll.
Right.
And so, now, so because of that, our pastors, when we started journeying into foster care, which we'll talk about that in just a moment, that was something that Hannah and I were both very, we just knew. We were like, we need to define what our home is going to look like, especially because of how much I guess how much it's hammered that, children who are in foster care have experienced so much tumultuous, inconsistent behavior and homes, and their home life has been that way. We were like, we have to create something for them that is going to be something they can absolutely count on, and they know what they're going to get. Yeah. Right. And so Pastor Devin talks about this all the time. Again, I'm just gonna be a mouthpiece of my pastors.
Yeah.
And so
you have good pastors, man.
They're great. They're phenomenal people. And but he says this when it comes to just the culture of your home. I'm looking at my home, right? And I'm going, again, if I'm not the one defining it, they're going to define it for me.
Yeah.
And the other thing that was so just powerful for me is seeing what can you count on in your parent. So he was asking this question. It's like, have you ever had a parent where you wake up one day and you're like, I wonder which mom I'm getting today? Am I going to get the mom that's going to let me go? Just let everything by.
Sure.
Am I going to get away with everything today? Right. Or am I going to get the angry mom who's going to just like get super in my face, right? Like, where's the consistency?
Yeah, that's so good.
We were trying to create consistency, which is one of our leadership behavior values. Is consistency. Not just consistency physically showing up, but consistency in my emotions, right? Students who are coming to our church, who 76% of them are living in split homes.
Okay.
Where we're going with mom's house one week, we're going to dad's house the other week, where they're changing grades or changing grades every year, sometimes changing schools every 2 to 3 years. What's consistent?
Yeah.
What's consistent in their life? In teenagers today, what's consistent in their life? What is something that they can count on? They can't count on getting the same parents because that's changing.
Right.
They can't count on getting the same teachers. That's changing. Their friends are changing. God, their bodies are changing.
Right.
What is consistent? Absolutely nothing. So when they walk into Connect Church, when they walk into this church, they need to know that they're going to get the exact same Destin every single time.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the same ridiculous, goofy self, right? Yeah. Who's going to love them, who's going to give my all and give my best. And they deserve that.
Yeah.
And if I can't give that to them, right, it's just going to be something else that's consistent. And what we know about the Word of God is that it's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Yeah. And if I'm going to model that, and if I'm going to model the Word of God, God's Word and His presence in their life, I need to be consistent as a leader, consistent as a parental figure, right? As if kind of jumping over to the fostering world, but we need to be consistent, right?
Yes.
And so I'm going to step across what another pastor says in our church is the invisible line of leadership. I'm going to step across this because I can't afford to bring my garbage into this space right now.
Yeah.
Right. It's not being disingenuous. I'm leading.
Yes.
And I'm going to unpack this with the people who are appropriate. I'm not going to unpack my garbage in front of my students.
Yes.
Why would I do that?
Right.
I'm going to do it with those who are appropriate. Yes. I'm going to step across the invisible line of leadership and lead students because they deserve that.
Yes.
They deserve to have somebody who's consistent. They deserve to have somebody who's going to stand firm in the Word.
Yes.
And stand firm in their love for them.
Yes.
And so we just took that principle and we were like, we're going to put that into the home. How are we going to define our home?
Yep.
So that it is consistent. They're going to count on it's going to be an honoring culture. It's going to be an honoring household. You dishonor, we got a problem, right? And it's also important to know just what making major and what's minor.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what am I going to get worked up about?
Yeah.
Right. Am I going to get worked up about our foster child dishonoring my wife, or am I going to get worked up about her just not cleaning her room for a day?
Sure.
Right. It's like, I'm going to make what's major. Right. Yeah. And if we can instill those values in her, right, ultimately she'll start to change. He'll start to change. Right. And so we're just trying to create an environment which they can grow in, which is the parable of, what is it? The parable of the sower.
Yeah.
Right. It's the seed in the fertile soil.
Yes.
Right. If the environment caused the seed to grow, I'm being another mouthpiece for my pastors. Thank you, pastors. Right. But it's the seed.
Hey, all the pastors listening, that just shows you when you invest in your people, what they can turn into.
They're listening. They're listening. Yeah. I've been there for, this is 6 years so, man. And we're listening. And
that's
so
awesome.
keep planting seed.
That's
keep planting seed. And, but it's the right environment that caused the seed to grow.
Yes.
Right. And so we're just trying to create an environment in which foster children can succeed, can thrive, can grow. Yeah. We're doing it in our organizations. We're doing it in our churches. We're trying to do it in our home. So we're just trying to move it into our home. And the family meetings really came from, and again, Patrick Lencioni's book, Death by Meeting.
Right.
And in fact, and the principle that he said was that we don't need to have less meetings. We actually need to have more, which was something that was so mind blowing to me because I'm going, we need to have more meetings.
Oh, I know. Right.
What are we talking about?
Because people are so used to bad meetings.
Yes. They're so used to bad
unorganized meetings
yes.
that, and, you come in and you don't know what the objective is. You don't know who's doing what. You don't have a timeline and you kind of get done and you're like, what happened? It's this ambiguous idea.
Exactly. And so he's talking about these 4 different types of meetings. Again, another book plug, Death by Meeting by Patrick Lencioni. But he's talking about these 4 different types of meetings. You get like your daily check-in, you get your weekly tactical then you have, there's just a couple of different other meetings. And so not every single one of those applied to our family.
Sure.
But I knew that, again, because of another Patrick Lencioni book, he's my favorite author. So I read all of his stuff.
Dude, I'm with
right?
you, bro.
Because of another one, which, the dysfunctions of a family, or not
of
what
a team.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Five dysfunctions of a team.
No, it's not that one. It's the one about the family. It's
oh, I don't know if I've read that one.
You haven't read this one yet? It's like oh man, dude, it's such a great book. Without remembering the title, the principle was that if we led our families in the same way we lead our organizations, we're like, what are we doing right now? We're leading our organizations. We're putting all of our effort towards our organizations to go, we got to talk about health. Yes. We got to talk about meetings. He's like, take that home.
I know.
Because your home is a wreck.
Right.
And you're trying to run an organization.
Isn't that crazy?
Isn't that wild? And
I know. I was challenged. That's kind of one of the things that challenged me on it too.
Really?
Because I was so passionate about, this was years ago when I heard him do this in this podcast. It was that same concept. Isn't that, you're going to look that book up, aren't you?
Yep. I'm like, this is going to drive me crazy, man.
I remember being so passionate and listening to all this leadership content and applying all of it to where I worked. And maybe that was because I just wanted to be great at what I was doing. And I do want to be a great leader. Craig Rochelle, we're name dropping like crazy here, quoting everybody, but the organization gets better when the leader gets, leader is better,
Absolutely.
And that's so true. And so, but I wasn't bringing it home. Not like I wasn't leading my home per se, but I wasn't like saying, hey, I'm going just as much as I prioritize a staff meeting.
Yes.
And that's like very important to me in my philosophy of leadership.
Yeah.
I was not doing that at home.
Yes.
Or I'd say, hey, these are our values, and we hire, we coach, we develop, we celebrate to our values. Yes. But I wasn't doing that at home. Like I had values, but nobody else knew what they were.
Right.
So everyone was kind of in this ambiguous place. And this was very young in our marriage where, my wife had her own values and philosophy, and I had my own, and we would clash, and we would had blind spots and be defensive and wonder why are we not?
Yep.
And it became because we never sat down and said, this is what we value.
Yes.
And then we literally put it up on the wall.
Yes.
So that people can see it.
Exactly.
And when I say people, I mean my kids. But it also is a way of leading others. You're hospitable, bring people come over.
Yes.
They see, your value is, work hard and do your best, or be quick to forgive and make your mistakes. Stand up for what's right, even though it's hard. Those are our three. And so when they see that, they go, oh man, I love that. So you're so right that we spend so much time in our workplace and we don't bring it home. And then we wonder why, like you said, 76% of your kids at Connect Church are from split families.
Yep.
What would it have looked like if couples in premarital counseling were able to define values, be able to define philosophy of leadership right in the beginning? Because typically that's where the divide is.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, that's so great.
What's the book name?
The book name is The 3 Big Questions for a Frantic Family.
Okay. I haven't read that one.
It's a great one.
I'll have to read that one.
It's really, really great. And, it was the book that came after 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Okay.
And of course, all of the other books that, 5 Temptations of a CEO and all of that
that
came before it. But that was one of the things that he mentioned was we have to define what's most important.
Yeah.
We have to define what's most important to our family right now. And it could change. And it does change. Right. But also, every single year at Connect, we do a teaching series in November on generosity and stewardship.
Yeah.
Right. And tithing ultimately.
Okay. Sure.
And talking about, this is a biblical principle. We're going to talk about it. Yeah. And a third of Jesus's parables are about money.
Right.
Right. So we got to,
it was
important,
bring it in the combo.
Right. We got to talk about it. And so it was so important to us that one, we stewarded our finances well. We stewarded our time well. We stewarded our calendar well. And because my wife and I are we both work full-time jobs and we're busy people, we just ended up going, you know what if we had a weekly tactical? So one of the meetings that were stated in the Death by meeting, what if we had a weekly tactical meeting to review where our finances are, look to the calendar, and then anything that may come up. And that was another thing. This was also need driven because, I'm one where I get something on my mind and I just want to immediately start talking about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I have this thought, I'm like, oh, we need to fix that. Like, let's take an example, like health insurance or something, just something that's like, we got to talk about it. We got to figure something out. Right.
Yeah.
But I would be thinking about that and then immediately call my wife and be like, babe, we got to talk about health insurance. And she's like, it's 11:30 in the morning and I'm working. Like,
you're like, great. Can you take a break?
Great. So like, here's what we need to do. Like, we need to talk. And so because we were like, so what this caused was a lot of frustration, right? Because she would call me with things and be like, what are we going to do about this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. I'm working.
Yeah.
Stop bothering me.
Right.
Like I'm already like trying to figure stuff out right now. And so it was very need driven from that instance where we're like, if we can set aside an hour a week, just an hour to where we put it on the calendar and say, we're going to have a tactical meeting to review stuff, but then also to bring in our foster child into that and say, hey, is there anything that you would like to discuss? Is there anything that you would like to talk about? Anything that is not clear to you about what you cannot do, where you're going to go, and then also we're using that moment to teach, hey, here's what it looks like to set plans and what it looks like to steward our finances well, right? And Pastor Devin refers to his budget as Mr. Budget. So whenever his kids ask him, hey, can we buy this? Let's go look at Mr. Budget. We'll see what he has to say about it, right? So we're removing the emotion from it and just putting the principle of saying, Mr. Budget, I'm sorry, he's a jerk. He said no. I'm so sorry. I love you, but Mr. Budget said no.
Mr. Budget
he's a jerk, right?
That's so smart.
I love it, right? And so
he's got that higher authority going, which
exactly
you need.
Right.
You need
exactly.
that. It's a great
like,
negotiation.
Let me just
principle.
blame it on Mr. Budget here because we can't buy that. I'm so sorry, but we just can't do.
His kids are like, I can't wait to meet Mr. Budget. We're gonna jump him.
He's the worst man. Where does he live? And so our pastors talk about that, just kind of de-emotionalizing, if you will, our finances and just looking at it from the perspective of, okay, are we managing this well?
Yes.
Are we stewarding this well? If you could be entrusted with a little, you could be entrusted with more.
Yeah.
And I want to be entrusted with more. And so we make it a big deal to review that, to look through it, set calendar, prioritize the things that we want to prioritize, put it on the calendar, have discussions with our foster child saying, hey, let's talk about how to create a plan.
Yeah.
Right. We want to go hang out with a friend. Great. When, where, what time, where's it at? How long are you going to be there? What does it look? So we're just trying to teach, using it as a teaching moment, but also so we can get on the same page about what's going on, needs that need to be met, challenges that we're having in our marriage, challenges that we're having just practically, just financially, all of those things. Yeah. And then we review it every now and then. We'll go on a date. We can just say, how are we doing with this? How are we doing? Yeah. Which is kind of what I think Patrick Lencioni calls it, like I think it's like the quarterly offsite.
Yeah.
The quarterly offsite meeting where we're reviewing the past 3 months and setting new goals for the next 3 months and stuff like that. And so for us, that just looks like a date. It's just, let's just go out on a date and have dinner and talk about the things that are important to us and all of that. So that was the need. And
I love that. And I love how we had this conversation. We were talking about a lot of leadership principles and organizational health, and then how we were, you mentioned kind of going into the foster care conversation. We will kind of sum this up because we're running short on time, but like if you bring somebody into your home, especially when you guys brought in a teenager, which, you don't have any of your own kids yet. Yeah. Typically, you guys are brand new foster parents. I remember engaging with you, and for those of you who are listening who don't know what we do, I work with a organization called the Bridge House, and we provide transitional housing for kids that are in foster care and also aging out of foster care. So been in this space for a long time, kind of grew up in this space. And pretty much everybody on our team has really lived this out. So everybody's just living this out in their life. And then you guys come into the picture. You're like, man, we really feel like God's calling us to do this. 29 years old. How old's your wife?
25.
25. Yeah. And so you guys step into this role, and most of the time, statistically, people typically want to foster younger children, understandably so. You're not going to get a high volume of people who are going to sign up for these 15, 16 plus kids. You're just not. Those kids even know it. You ask a 16-year-old kid that we deal with at our transitional housing, they are going to tell you, I'm just going to foster me. I'm going to go residential, and they know that. sad, heartbreaking, kills me. But so when I see a couple that says, hey, we're willing to do that, we'll take a 15-year-old. The beauty that I love is that you were already so intentional about your home environment. So when this individual came in, they saw structure, but not, I remember you said something and we were talking back and forth about some challenges that you were kind of facing and just trying to figure out like a certain situation out.
Yeah.
And you were telling me that you brought this kiddo that was staying with you into the family meeting. You mentioned it earlier too, and gave her the ability to be able to share about what she sees.
Yeah.
And I think you said at one point, she said, hey, I heard you guys had a family meeting. Do I need to be at that? Mm-hmm. And you were like, oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Which I just thought was, gosh, that's so healthy. What a sense of belonging that must have gave her. And then what a great way to be able to, because you guys aren't doing it in a sense of, hey, here's all these rules.
Right.
It's really more, hey, this is what we value.
Right.
And we, being that you're in our home, we want you to feel like you're part of this.
Yeah.
Different. You know what I mean? It's much more like, I don't know, much more of like a circle kind of vibe, you know, versus like these hard square edges,
right?
That I think you guys are doing. So I love that. Tell me just, you know, really quick, reason why you guys decided to foster. What was the big push there? And start with that.
Yeah. So the short answer is just we felt the Lord was prompting us to step into that. And we also just saw the need, and it kept bothering me.
Okay,
you know, it's when you hear the names, you hear the stories, you hear the statistics around teenagers in foster care and teenagers that age out of foster care and don't have any place to go.
Right,
and that it just kept bothering me.
Yeah,
I couldn't kind of shake that.
Right.
And ultimately I was burdened for someone, and that's really what I felt and what my wife felt. We just felt burdened for this particular group of people.
Yeah.
And I think it's somewhere in Proverbs 31 where it says it's like fight for those who are less fortunate, fight for those who, I'm forgetting the exact verse or where it's at, but I'm pretty sure it's in Proverbs 31 somewhere. But it was just, we're going to stand up and fight for these people. And so we just couldn't shake it, if you will. And then the Lord really threw us just a nice haymaker to the face, if you will, because, you know, we felt this, I felt this kind of earlier this year. And so I kind of kept it quiet because I was like, what is my wife going to think about this? You know? And then our pastors were like, hey, we're going to launch a foster care initiative. Mm-hmm. So it's the heart of Pastor Ashley, who's our executive pastor.
Yeah,
Pastor
she's
Devon's,
awesome.
Pastor Devon's wife.
Yeah.
And she's a rock star and was like, this is something that's been on my heart for 10 years. They have adopted as well. They have an adopted boy. And so that's been on their heart. And so they wanted to bring that vision to the church and say, we're gonna start a wrap ministry to wrap around foster families to provide care, support, words of encouragement, respite, acts of service, and prayer. And we're gonna wrap around these families and love on them because it's hard and there's a need and we want to fill it and meet it. And so all of that was happening while we were like, we should step into this. Mm-hmm. And then the Lord literally was just like, yep, and I already have a support system created for you. So go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just this beautiful marriage of burden, desire, and opportunity.
Yes.
You know, and so we stepped into it and we went on the process and started the journey, and just to see our church come around us and love on us and provide support and care and loving on our foster child has been the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And just unbelievable the way that the church has responded and stepped up and said, yeah, we're here.
Yes.
We're here to do it. And Pastor Ashley, praise God for her, she rallied the entire women's ministry. Is like, this is what we're going after. Like, let's go, you know, like we're going to fight for it. And it's so cool.
Yes.
So great to see. So,
and I love the energy just even around like, hey, if there's one family in your church,
yes,
go nuts for it, because you think of the impact that well, let's say this. Let's say I truly believe that every family is called to foster care, but not everyone's called to foster parent.
Yeah.
I believe that. And I believe that we don't necessarily always get a calling per se that's like, yes, you're called to be a foster parent.
Right.
Sometimes it literally is the haymaker to the face, right? Yep. And they're on your doorstep and you're like, okay, God, you want us to do this.
Here we go.
Yep. Right. Fast forward, if you're obedient and you have the right support structure, and that church gets excited, your community is excited, they're your tribe. I mean, fast forward, you might end up having, 20 some odd people that couple ends up fostering because they got the support that they needed. And I know people like that because they have the support that they needed. They've had the people around them. They've had their tribe. They've fostered sometimes even more than that because they just are so passionate about just getting these kids opportunities to be able to feel loved. And I always love that quote that every child is one success story away from one caring adult. And it's so true. So you see these success stories happening when people are opening up their home, but they do need support to do that. So it's even if you have one family in your home that's fostering and you have pastors, you have your team around you celebrating that, championing you forward, they have no idea the seeds that they're planting that are going to, they see other people are watching, they see your experience, they say, man, maybe we can foster.
Right.
Now you turned 1 into 2, 2 into 3, 3 into 4, and it just continues to go by just continuing that element of excitement.
Yes.
Championing them forward, celebrating, sharing stories. And your own stories are going to come out like they are even now and now we have other groups of people who are hearing it, So it's so powerful in that sense. And I think too, one of the things I absolutely loved about your specific situation, and without getting into names where we have any issues, but basically you had a kid that came in that was 15, right? She
or 16.
16. Okay. 16, so for those of you who don't know the foster care space, she would have been considered a level 3, I believe.
Yep.
The way that they level kids is basically, it can be a variety of things, right? It can be behavior. It could be, they're medically fragile. It could be those type of things. So you could have a 1-year-old who's a level 3 or 4 because they're very medically fragile and they've had a lot of just rough things happen to them. Or you could have a level, 3 kiddo who's, a teenager who is all behavioral. They just have a lot of behavioral issues, right? So you guys have a level 3, probably more from behavioral, I would imagine. She comes in your environment. You guys are being championed by your church. You have the support of our organization too, the Bridge House. We've had lots of conversations. You've already had an environment that was very healthy. And so she was coming into a place that was somewhat whole.
Hopefully.
Y'all knew where you were going. I know.
Yeah.
And now, fast forward, obviously you've had challenges, a lot of hard conversations, a lot of personal growth, I imagine, a lot of things maybe you guys, you and Hannah both would say, man, maybe we would do that different.
Yeah.
All good things. We've all been there. You don't know what you don't know. But that the big key item, which I want people to hear, is that young lady went from a level 3, which she was you were a temporary place until she was going to go into a residential facility, which a residential facility is like, it's not jail, but it's not jail either. I mean, they have to stay there. They do school there. They do life there. There's no family. There's no, hey, I want to leave and go hang out with my friends. It's like your entire life is at that residential facility until you can be rehabilitated out. And then if that were to have happened to her, just to build some context, if she was with you temporarily, she went residential, she probably would have aged out. And she probably would have most likely had nowhere to go after she aged out. That's the trajectory because of where she's at with her age.
Yeah.
You guys open up your home. She's 16.
Yeah.
She was temporarily in your home to potentially go residential. They see how well she does. They take her level lower.
Yeah.
And now she's staying with you guys. She's not going residential.
Yeah.
And now she's in a family environment where she can thrive.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
If the angels are not screaming in heaven, I don't know who is, because that makes me want to just freak out and jump up and down and praise Jesus right now. If the worship band were in here, they could be like,
that's right.
If I had a whole group, if I had a huge congregation, I'd be like, come on, church, get up and clap the feet. And the drummer's like, elevation church style. I'm like Stephen Furtick on the front row.
Yeah.
That's how I feel right in this moment. That's how excited I am. So, man, just so huge. And I hope people can hear through this conversation how massive that is in this young lady's life. And if we all just ask God what he wants us to do in the space.
Yeah.
What would that look like throughout Tennessee?
Yep.
Now, not everyone can foster care and be a foster parent, but we don't need everybody to do it.
Yep.
We need good people to do it who have good homes, right?
Yeah.
And we need, I would say, even take it further, we need followers of Jesus who are discipled and passionate about Jesus to do it.
Yes.
And then we need people to surround and champion nonprofits, these people who are doing it, champion them forward so that we can continue to move the needle.
Yeah.
And I see your story, man, and I'm like, dude, even if it's just that one out of X amount of people that I know,
right?
I'll take it.
Yeah, we will see. We will see. I mean, the hope is just that we will just fan into flame.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's 1 Timothy, just fanning into flame the gift.
Yeah.
That's within her, the story that's within her.
Yes.
And we've been even looking up and like her name, what her name means. Like
what does her name mean?
What's her identity? It's something like
I know you can't say her first name, but what is her actual
name? Her name means like, Hannah told me this literally just last night. It's something like to rejoice or joy.
Wow.
Or something like that. It's something along those lines.
Yeah.
I think it actually quite literally meant to rejoice.
Wow.
And we were like, whoa.
Yeah, that's deep.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
Like the enemy's trying to steal her joy. That's what's happening right here, right? Because we all know, right?
Yeah.
The war is not between flesh and blood.
Oh, sure.
There's a spiritual war that's being battled right now.
Absolutely.
And with her coming into the home, we're having to cover that room
spiritually.
I'm
sure.
Right? With all of the things that could be coming into the house through what she may have experienced or have gone through. And so that's been just an absolute joy to like, again, just small little incremental steps, right?
Yeah.
Just small incremental steps and seeing her growth. And ultimately we don't know what's going to happen.
Sure.
Right? We don't know where she's going to end up, where she's going to go, if she's going to stay with us, she reunited with family, wherever
Very
she
possible.
ends up going. But ultimately the hope is that she will find her identity in the Lord, who the Lord has called her to be.
Yes.
And everything that the Lord has planned for her. That's really what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Like wherever she ends up going. And so, it's a joy to just be a part of that and watch her thrive.
Yeah.
And succeed in life. So
awesome.
I think it was even you that said this. It was like, I think it was you that said this, that we're all, we're not, may not all be called to foster care, but we're all called to care.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that was you that said that.
Yeah. We're all called, I believe we're all called to foster care, but not to foster parent.
Yes. Yeah. And just to care in the best way that we know how.
100%.
So it's so great.
It is, man. I am such a huge believer in that. And I think, you're a prime example of what it can look like. And we have other stories too that we've shared on our podcast with other people who have stepped up in this space too, and just what it takes and what can happen when a community really is stepping up. And I really believe, just kind of in closing that, whoever is listening, obviously we have to get our homes right first.
Yeah,
we do. Yeah. We have to have our homes right. We need to know our values. We need to know our philosophy of leadership in Org One, right? Being our family. And then we all can do something in the space too, as it relates to foster care. What does God want us to do? Wherever you're listening, who are your organizations that are doing this? Maybe you're in a church and this isn't happening. What conversations can you have to be able to start this? And you can reach out to me directly if you're listening as well too, and you want, wherever you live geographically. I mean, we absolutely have things that can be copied and pasted into various different cities, countries, even, as it relates to what we do. So we are here, to help anybody who's in this space. And if you message in, you say, man, I want to connect with you guys, you can go to thebridgehouse.tn.org. You can hit us up on Instagram at the Bridge House TN, message us, connect with us, and we'd be happy to just further that conversation too. But dude, I'm so glad that you came. I know we talked, we're coming up on an hour and 18 minutes. I could talk to you forever. I mean, I could circle back around.
We could go.
I know we
could go
could.
again.
It'd be like a 3-hour podcast.
Let's talk about another book.
Why not? I know. But dude, I appreciate you guys.
Dude, thank you.
Man, if you're local and you're looking for a good church, Connect Church, located in Mount Juliet. Pastor Devin is a beast, and man, you got obviously you amazing youth pastor here as well too. So
we're trying our best.
Hey, you guys are crushing
to move
it.
the needle in the kingdom, right?
Yeah. Well, dude, I believe bro, that God has big things ahead for you. I'm excited to see what he rolls out, and praying for you guys and your kiddo at your house too, as you're fostering. So appreciate you being on, man.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.